And then you are summoned before a government panel, even if you haven't committed any crime or been for near repeated questions about your political views, accused of disloyalty, and asked to incriminate your friend and associate. If you don't cooperate, you risk jail or losing your job. This is exactly what happened in United States in the 1950s as a part of a campaign to expose suspect communists, named after its practitioner. The phenomenon known as Marxism destroyed thousands of lives. For over American political Trump's democratic freedoms in the name of protecting them. During the 1930s and 1940s, there was a small communist party in the United States. Its record was mixed. Crucial role in wide progressive struggles for labor and civil rights. It also served Soviet Union. From the start, the American Communist Party faced attack from conservatives and business leaders, as well as from liberals who criticized its ties to the Soviet regime during the World War II. The USSR allied against Hitler. Some American communists actually spied for the Russians. As espionage became known, domestic communism came to be seen as a threat to national security. But the attempt to eliminate the threat soon turned into the longest-lasting and widespread episode of political repression in American history. Student bureaucrats, politicians, journalists, and businessmen, the campaign widely exaggerated the danger of communist subversion. The people behind the announcers said those who did. If you hung a model on your walls had a much larger war signed petition against nuclear weapons, you might just communist. Starting late 1940s, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover used the resources of his agency to hunt down the supposed communists and eliminate any position influence within American society. The narrow criteria that Hoover and his allies used to screen federal employees spread to the rest of the country. Soon, Harriet studio universities, car manufacturers, and thousands of private employers were imposing the same political tests on the men and women who worked for them. Meanwhile, Congress conducted its own witch hunt, subpoenaing hundreds of people testifying before investigative bodies like the House Un-American Activities Committee. If they refused to cooperate, they could be jailed for contempt. More commonly, blacklisted. Ambitious politicians like Richard Nixon and Joseph Marcus used such hearings as a partisan weapon, accusing Democrats being soft on communists and deliberately losing China to communist bloc. McCarthy, a public senator Wisconsin, became notorious by fronting ever-changing alleged communists within State Department. Egged on by other politicians, he continued to make outrageous accusations while distorting fabricating evidence. reviled McCarthy, while others praised him. And when the Korean War broke out, McCarthy seemed vindicated. Once he became chair of the Senate Subcommittee on Investigation in 1953, McCarthy's recklessness increased. It was his investigation of the army that finally public opinion against them, and McCarthy's colleagues censored him and had 3 years later alcoholism. McCarthyism ended as well. It had ruined hundreds, if not thousands, and drastically narrowed the American political spectrum. Its damage to democratic institutions would be long-lasting. In unlike Democrat public, anti-communist party unjust, but feared directly by Koreans. Even the Supreme Court failed to stop the witch hunt, condoning serious violations of constitutional rights in the national security. Was domestic communists an actual threat to the American government? Perhaps a small one, but the reaction to it was so extreme, far more damage than the threat itself. And demagogues appeared in certain times to attack unpopular minorities in the name of patriotism. Could it all happen again? Hold on. As Vietnam president to serve, you see President Nixon resigned for the good of the nation. President Ford, who took over, he resigned because he was about to be impeached. What does this count, Your Honor? The Watergate scandal was one of the grossest abuses of presidential in history. Nixon's man broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters to wiretap the offices that opponents for the election campaign. It was established that President ordered his burglary. But as soon as he learned of it, he did everything to cover it up while lying about it to masses. But yes, it was for the good country. He did so much during his time in office because of so much more scandal. jeopardizing his accomplishment. Accomplishment? Yes, Your Honor. Did you know it was President Nixon who proposed the creation and environmental protection and signed the National Environmental Policy Act into law, not to mention Endangered Marine Mammal Protection Act, the Expansion Clean Act, some progressive hardly. His presidential campaign Carter hasn't fulfilled any resentment of the civil rights movement. Speaking of the prosecution may be surprised to learn Title IX Amendment banning gender-based discrimination in education and basically occurred peacefully, and he allowed so that students could vote. But the National Guard instead he called them. A war he had campaigned on ending, but he did end it. He ended it in 2 years. Yes. Died for nothing. A presidential can interfering for negotiation. Isn't that tourism? It is, Your Honor. A clear violation of the Law Against Act of 1799. I think we'll forget President Nixon's mining foreign policy achievement. It was he who normalized ties with China for within. Economic ties continue today. Are we so sure? And for support the coup in Chile that democratically elected Allende is the brutal military dictator. It was communism. When tyranny we opposed communism to begin with was just fear of the lower class rising up against the rich. President Nixon could never predict the violence regime, and being anti-communist didn't mean neglecting. He proposed guaranteed basic income for all of American families, still a radical concept today, and he even pushed for comprehensive health care reform, just the kind of past 40 years later of confused burger business government. Your Honor, President Nixon may have violated. What was the real harm compared to the harm was to democracy itself? The whole point of the ideal planned road is that later our country Pausing. The important pause. Brutus was hesitant to conspire that he had treated. As a result, the temperature falls out of room. The ensuing vacuum led to a series of civil wars, during which Brutus, facing sudden defeat, took it on life. Ironically, the ultimate result would be the opposite of what the conspirators hoped to accomplish: the end of the Republic, concentration of power under the office emperor. Opinions of the assassination divided from that and have remained so. As for Brutus himself, few historical figures such a conflicting legacy. His Dante's funeral, he was placed in the very center of hell, eternally chastised himself for his crime. Betrayal. Gargo's trouble described him as one of the most virtuous and benevolent people to Brutus as a dictatorship, or the opportunistic traitor has the ties of history and politics. But even today, years later, question about the price of liberty, the conflict between the loyalties and various ideas, and unintended consequences remain more relevant. now on of the United States based on office across the globe. It's new that there's a nuclear weapon capable of destroying, and destruction never closer during certain days. The U.S. unsuccessfully tried new communist attempt known as the Bay and convinced Cuba to seek help. USSR. Soviet President Khrushchev was happy to comply by secretly deploying nuclear missiles to Cuba, not only protecting but counter threat from US missiles in Italy. By the time US intelligence discovered the plan, the material to create the missile is already in place. At an emergency meeting October 16, 1932, as an airstrike on missile sites in Mah-Jong, India, chose a more careful approach. On October 22nd, he announced that the U.S. Navy would intercept all shipments to Cuba. There was just one problem: a naval blockade was considered an active war, called a quarantine. But the Soviets didn't appreciate the distinction. In the outrage letter to Kennedy, the violation of international water and international airspace is an active aggression. Abyss was nuclear missile war. Thus ensued the most intense 6 days of the Cold War. For the removal missiles, Cuba and the USSR insisted their own defensive. So continued to U.S. prepared for possible invasion. On October 20, a spy plan shut down Soviet missile. The same day, nuclear Soviet submarine was hit by small depth shells for universal to come up. The commander said too deep communicate with surface and prepare to run nuclear torpedoes unanimously by 3 officers. The captain and political officer both authorized the launch, but Vasily Arkhipov, second in command, refused. His decision saved the day, perhaps the world. But the crisis wasn't over. For the first time in history, the U.S. military set at DEFCON 2, the defense readiness, one step away from nuclear war. With hundreds of nuclear missiles ready to launch, and doomsday cloud stood at the 1 minute to midnight. But diplomacy carried on. In Washington, D.C., Attorney General Robert Kennedy secretly met the Soviet ambassador and there is the following proposal. The U.S. would remove the missile from Turkey and Italy, never invade Cuba. In exchange, Soviets withdrew from Cuba and UN inspection. Analysts concluded that Moscow, saying time as essence, we shouldn't miss the chance. And at 9 a.m. the next day, a message arrived. Khrushchev announced Soviet missiles would be removed from Cuba. The crisis was now over. While criticized the time government, Contemporary his historical analysis shows great admiration and Khrushchev's ability to diplomatically solve the crisis, but disturbing lesson. Nearly did, if not for Vasily Akikov. And given review. Imagine you're watching a random trolley bearing down, split for the 5 workers who can't escape. You happen to standing next to a switch, divert the trolley onto us. It's a problem. That truck has a worker on the tube, just one. What do? Do you sacrifice one person to save 5? This is a trolley problem. A version skapte man philosophy. Very large man and brick next to you. If you push him over his body, he'll stop the trolley, saving the 5 workers, but he'll die. To utilitarian, the decision is the same. But in this case, only about 10% of people say it is okay to throw the man onto the truck. Our instinct tells us that deliberately causing someone's death is different than allowing them to die as a collateral damage. It just feels this intersection between psychology example men and more likely women say it's a depression was a breach. Comedy. and one virtual reality study to a more sacrifice men than women. Researchers studied brain activity of people thinking through the classic and Greek version. Those activated involved in conscious decision-making and emotional responses. In the Greek version, emotional response is much stronger, so is activity in the brain associated with processing internal conflict. Why the difference? One explanation is that pushing someone to death feels more personal, emotional urgent to killing the person, but we feel conflicted. Still, the logical choice truly urges some philosophers and psychologists. They argue that doesn't live in anything because its premise more important. Meanwhile, the government researching autonomous that could wind up making decisions of whether civilian casualties to attack have a target. ASCA, they have decided in advance how to value human life and judge the greater good. So researchers who study autonomous systems are collaborating philosophy to address the complex problem of programming ethics into machines. It goes shows that even hypothetic drama can wind up in collision course with the real world. different. The high standard of excellence, expectations to serve part of their lives remain the same.